don't overthink your categorizing. Think about categorizing your expenses the way that makes sense to you, that helps you manage your rental property and understand your finances better.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 143. One of the questions that many rental property owners have is what type of accounting program should they use to keep track of their income and expenses? Today we're going to talk about what you should look for in accounting software, the information you should be tracking, how you should set it up for tax purposes, and best practices in the real estate industry. And to have this conversation with me is Steve Bjorkman, the CEO and founder of Rental Hero, which he designed to, you guessed it, keep track of your rental income and expenses. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
You do own rental property. Why don't we start there? I mean, just give us a little sense of your background and how you became a rental property owner and ended up getting into this field of keeping track of the accounting and the books.
Sure. So it's actually a pretty simple but sort of a weird about way that I got into it. We were living in Arizona at the time, and this was about 6 years ago. And as you know, 6 years ago, the market for real estate was, pretty much down in the dumps. So at the time, we were moving back to Michigan, and we said, hey, should we sell our house, which we would have taken a loss on it. And when we looked at it, we said, hey, we'd be better off holding the property for a couple of years just to see if it goes up as opposed to trying to sell it right now for a loss. So we decided to rent it out. So, we found some tenants, put tenants in there and, moved back to Michigan. Now, in that same time period, I had just released a new software program called Notary Gadget, which was a accounting software that was built specific for notaries. Well, the idea then progressed into real estate, and then we created a new accounting software built just for real estate agents, which then progressed into a software that is designed to do the exact same thing, but for rental property owners. And, having had some experience with the rental property that I had owned, and it's still to this day rented out, it has been for the last 6 years, you learn real quick about the easy ways to keep track of your expenses and the hard ways to do it. And that's kind of how Rental Hero was born. It was, designed to be a simple software program that was catered exactly towards the way that a rental property owner or a landlord would need to track their income and expenses.
Well, let's talk about that, because anybody who owns rental property, especially those who are managing their own rental property, they need to know how to keep track of the income and the expenses and the numbers. What have you seen that are some of the ways people are doing it that are more complicated than they need to be, or just are flat out wrong?
So, the biggest thing that I've seen personally, and I have other friends, that are in the rental business. I have a friend of mine who owns, 24, 25 properties now. And to this day, he's still using Excel, which, is an awesome tool. I mean, I'm an Excel junkie. I love Excel. I probably go into it way further than most people ever care to know about. But the problem with it is that there's a couple of two big problems with it. The first one is that anytime you want to make a change to something, you've got to basically recreate it yourself. Anytime you want to run quick analysis on something, you've got to make all the changes. You got to write the formulas. You got to hope that your formulas and everything else are correct when you're done. The second big reason is, let's talk about what happens when it comes time to sell your rental property. So when you go and you find a prospective buyer, and then you hand them an Excel spreadsheet, it's not going to look near as professional as if you were using a software program like, obviously like Rental Hero or Quickbooks or the other, 4 or 5 different software packages that are out there.
You're talking about when you finally do try to sell your property, if you've been keeping your books in Excel. And I see this a lot, people who keep their own Excel spreadsheets. And to them, it makes all the sense in the world. And it's like the greatest system ever devised by man. But to someone else, it is just gobbledygook. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, and not only that, but when you hand somebody something that's handmade, I think for them looking from the outside in, and I certainly would feel this way if I was going to buy a rental property or an investment property, is I would look at it and say, well, you kind of did it in Excel, which means, I don't know if your formulas are right. I don't know if you added up everything correctly, whereas if you're using a software program, those checks and balances are already there. Not to mention it's going to have a reliable system that, it's an accounting system that you can go back and produce historical results. And I think it just builds more trust with a potential buyer.
Yeah. And then QuickBooks. I mean, a lot of people use QuickBooks to keep track of their numbers. What's your take on that?
So QuickBooks is a great software. It is probably one of the most powerful accounting software programs that are out there. But, my personal take on it and many of the people that I've talked to is that it's overkill for what they need. A lot of people open up QuickBooks and you kind of got to have some real integrated knowledge of how to do accounting to get going on it. Whereas something like Rental Hero, or I'm sure there's other packages that are out there as well, but something that's designed to be simple. I mean, that's why people start off using Excel, because it's easy, right? Like it's easy for you to just, put your income and expenses into. You can probably even download files from your bank account into like a CSV format and then pull those into Excel. So it makes things really easy. Well, that's the whole concept, that the founding reason behind Rental Hero. And, what I would advise, even if you don't use Rental Hero, if you find something else, the idea is to find something that's very, very simple, easy to use, and doesn't take a lot of time to either learn how to do it, or even once you learn how to do it, take a lot of time to keep up with your books. Because let's face it, nobody likes to do accounting. I mean, yes, we all like to count the money that we have coming in from our rental properties, and we love to see that ROI. But at the same token, how many people want to sit down once a month or once a quarter and start hand typing in a bunch of expenses? I mean, nobody wants to do that. And that's why, once again, software can have a huge impact on that. Rental Hero and as well as QuickBooks and a lot of other ones that are out there allow you to tie your bank account to it so that the software can automatically download transactions and even pre-categorize them for you. So this way, you log in once a month or once a quarter, and it might take you 5 or 10 minutes of accounting versus trying to pull up all your bank statements, downloading it, copying and pasting in Excel or just manually keying things in. I mean, that's going to take a lot longer. And like most things and most people, I believe, things you don't like to do, you put off to the very end. And accounting is probably the worst thing you can do to put off to the very end, because there's typically very big fines associated with, filing your taxes late or miscalculating your income and expenses.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about best practices. Whether you're using QuickBooks or Rental Hero or Excel, you need to do things properly. And what does that mean when it comes to accounting?
Well, there's really two things that I can think of off the top of my head. The first big one that I tell everybody, and this is regardless of whether you're into real estate or into your side hustle or whatever other business you might own, get a separate business account. It is the biggest thing that causes problems with accounting for a couple of reasons. When you commingle your funds with a personal account, it makes your accounting 10 times more difficult because you have a bunch of mixed transactions. And then so
if I have a checkbook, my personal checkbook, and I'm writing checks for my rental property out of it, that would be a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Because once again, when it comes time to reconcile all those transactions, or to at the end of the quarter or month, or some people wait till the end of the year for you to add up all those income and expenses, you've got to sort through that much more data, and then you got to hope that you didn't miss something that was supposed to be a business expense, but you're like, oh yeah, did I, maybe you made a trip to a seminar or something, and you said, oh yeah, was that meal or did I buy those supplies? Was that for that trip, or was that something I bought for my own personal use? So the big thing is get a business account. A lot of banks now offer free business accounts. I know there's a couple of big ones in Michigan. I think you can get a free basic, or even you don't have to call it a business account. You can open up a personal account and just keep all your expenses and your income into that account, so you're not commingling.
So segregate your expenses.
Yeah.
If it has to do with your property, make sure it's separate from your own personal income. And that would just basically, that's the account you have at the bank that all your money's running through.
Exactly.
You're paying your bills out of that checking account, and you can have a money market account for the savings. Maybe put some money into that money market account every month, but you want to keep it all separate from your personal finances. What's the second thing that you see?
So the second big one is don't wait till the last minute. That's probably the second, killer, if you will, when it comes to accounting. That's why, because, most people do this, and I think most of your listeners will probably agree, is most people don't like to do accounting, so they put it off, just like I said before. And then they wait till the very last minute. And then it becomes this giant task that they've created in their mind that's, oh my gosh, it's going to take me forever to do it. And quite honestly, it can take a long time. I mean, if you've got 4 or 5 rental properties and you don't do anything till the last day of the quarter, if you have to pay estimated taxes last day of the quarter, if you're doing it yearly, I mean, can you imagine 12 months of income, expenses, and everything else that's going on throughout the year? I mean, that adds up to be a lot of work. So by putting it off, it becomes a much more complicated task because there's so much more of it to do. And then secondly, trying to remember things that you bought or what you paid for or how to categorize those. And they're 9 months ago. Most people's memory is not that detailed. So it essentially creates a lot of work. So my big advice here would be that, do it at least once a quarter. For those people who have to do, quarterly, make quarterly estimated tax payments, I mean, you have to do it once a quarter anyway. And anybody who's ever paid one of those late or paid the wrong amount knows how quickly the penalties and interest add up.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. My advice is if you own rental property and you're truly treating it as a business, you shouldn't be doing your books anyway. You should hire a bookkeeper to take care of that for you.
Yep. So, it's interesting you say that too. So there's, I think a lot of people get the two terms intermingled, which is accounting and bookkeeping. So, what Rental Hero does, and even quite frankly, what, most, people who owned rental properties who use, say, Quickbooks or Excel are doing, they're really doing bookkeeping. And bookkeeping is the concept of just tracking your income and expenses so that you can then take that data and then file the tax reports that you do. Now, what I would advise, just like you have, is you should always hire an accountant. And my general philosophy is I only hire CPAs, and I only have for the last probably 12 years
to do my books.
Mm-hmm. I only hired certified public accountants. And it's not so much that that your tax prep guys down the corner that do it for $100 or whatever. It's not that they're not that knowledgeable, but based on my own experience, and this is a true story. There was one year when I did my taxes, and I did it in TurboTax or whatever, and I came out with a number and said, "Oh, you're going to get a refund of," I don't remember what the exact number was maybe $1,000 or something like that. So then I said, as a test, I said, okay, well, I'm going to call a CPA, and I called the CPA, ironically the CPA that I still use, and I had him do it, and he came up with like $3,000. I remember the delta was $2,000 difference. And it was just because I used a CPA. And I'm not saying, a TurboTax calculated it wrong. It probably calculated it perfectly based on the stuff that I answered. But, I don't know if I'm answering those questions.
But it's not asking you the detailed questions to find out if there's more. Is there more that you can actually write off or ways to get more money back from your taxes?
Exactly. And especially, there's another hidden benefit that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to choosing a CPA, but choosing a CPA over, say, just your average tax prep or even doing it yourself. A lot of them can give you insight, and my CPA certainly gives me insight into, hey, when you hit a certain income level, all right, we're going to turn your LLC into an S Corp and we're going to pay you like this or what have you. And then also setting up like a retirement fund, doing those kind of things too. And you can start to look at, especially if you're planning to make, real estate your full-time job, a great way to shelter a lot of your income is to open up retirement funds, is to open up your own 401k. So things like a solo 401k.
Yeah. So it's good to have, you got to have a good CPA on your team to help you through this, but help me set up the books. So let's say I buy a rental property and I'm going to manage it myself. I'm going to keep my own books. How do I begin to even figure out where to start? I know I have to classify certain things and put down numbers, but what are the basic building blocks?
Yep. So it's actually really simple. And this is the part where I think a lot of people overthink it. And really the big three things that you need to track are 1, your income, obviously, 2, the expenses, and then 3 is security deposits. And security deposits more so because they're not really income, right? You're just holding money. It's a deposit. So you got to make sure that you're not going to categorize that as income. Again, one of those things too, where you look at the bank account at the end of the year, and if you just added up all your income, the income might be wrong if you just put new tenants in there and you collected a $1,000 security deposit.
Yeah,
so you're going to end up paying.
Security deposit, that's not income. That's like held in a separate account.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be held in a separate account, depending on what stage you're in, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, in addition to that, the real problem is if you categorize it as income, you're essentially going to pay taxes on it, which you obviously don't want to do because it's just literally a deposit. Now, once, if the deposit then turns, say you have $300 in damage or something that you retain from that, yes, that part then becomes income. But, the 1,000 or the 700 that's left in that case is still going to be considered a deposit. And you certainly don't want to claim that as income. Now, inside of the expenses that you're going to categorize, there's, there are a few types of expenses that you need to make sure you categorize correctly, which is going to be, the big one's going to be capital equipment, certain repairs and whatnot that you, like large repairs. A lot of those have to be, like if you put a new roof on your house, it's actually a capital improvement. So it's not really a repair, it's an improvement. And those typically have to be amortized or depreciated over a set number of years. Once again, great reason that you should have an accountant on your staff because he's going to make sure that you don't fall into those pitfalls. Because if you do get audited and the IRS comes in and says, hey, you put a new roof on, that $10,000 write-off you had this year isn't really a write-off. That needs to be depreciated over the next 15 years. Then, you're going to end up with a nice sized tax bill.
If you are thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition 5 years ago, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB & Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you're expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. What are some of the actual line items that people need to keep track of?
Sure. So it's not so much, and this is another thing too, and this is why it's great to have an accountant. So many people, I think, especially when you first start out, you're worried about putting things in the right category, if you will. There really isn't really a right category. There's only a handful of things that need to be, categorized separately. And that is, like I said, capital equipment and capital improvements need to be categorized separately. The only other real thing that you have is, meals and entertainment, which as of, 2018 with the Trump's new tax law, a lot of the write-offs for that have gone away. But once again, an accountant's a great one to have because some of those you still can write those off. If you're traveling, for a business trip, in many cases, you can still write off those. You just can't do like if you're taking your buddy out to eat and you're going to talk about rental, that stuff, the entertainment part doesn't fly anymore, but you still can expense your meals when you're traveling and whatnot. But again, accountant's a great one to have it. So other than those two, those are really the only things that you have to categorize separately. The key that I've always followed and I always tell people is create categories that help you understand where you're spending your money. Because the best thing that you can do, whether it's in a rental property or any other business, is know where you're spending money. Because
what are those typical categories?
So in a rental property, like for example, in my rental property is a great example. So, it has a pool in it. So I have pool maintenance, which anything that has to do with my pool, I keep separate. So this way, at the end of the year, I can look back and say, how much extra does it cost to have a rental property with a pool in it? Same thing goes for maintenance. The rental property that, my old house that I have, it's what I call a full service rental. So, I pay for all of the maintenance and all of the landscaping, everything, mostly because I want to make sure that it's kept up very well. But once again, I can create a separate category for that and then put all of those expenses in there. So now at the end of the year, I can say, hey, what is that true cost of adding that benefit? And then I obviously market that too. When I put a new set of tenants in, or when I advertise it as a full service rental, so that I have a number at least in my head of how much that is going to cost me extra. So then I know where I need to place my rent at.
So what about things like just like insurance and utilities and that? I mean, is it just as simple as having a separate line item for those things?
Yeah, it is. Once again, it's all about how you want to track it so that you can understand your business, and in this particular case, how you can understand the cost for each rental. So, some people might want to say, hey, I'm just going to lump all of my utilities into one category and call it utilities. Whereas,
probably not a good idea. I would recommend against that.
Well, yeah, because it doesn't give you any analysis, right? It doesn't give you any feedback. It just tells you, hey, here's what I spent. You got to think
of the end buyer. Eventually, someday, this property will be sold. And when it's sold, people are going to say, well, what's the electric bill?
Exactly.
What's the gas bill? What's the water sewer bill? And you want to be able to break those out. If you just say, well, the total utility bill is $2,000 a month. Well, what does that mean? What does that include? Because when you get to the bigger properties, the multifamily, larger multifamily, a lot of times trash is included in the utilities.
That's right.
So you got to break it out.
Yeah, no, and I would agree. So me personally, I have a category, so I use Rental Hero to track my expenses for my rental. And in there I have my category utilities, and then I have 3 or 4 subcategories under there that, one is gas, one's going to be, electric or water, whatever your utilities that you have that you pay for.
Yeah, some people pay for internet and
internet.
Cable.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very good point. So, having all of that, once again, when it comes time to sell it, or even for your own personal analysis, I mean, take a look at it and say, wow, I'm paying, X amount for internet. Maybe it's time for me to take a look and see what other competitive, quotes I can get for it.
Well, absolutely. And the water bill, I mean, let's say if you want to keep track of your water bill separately so you can compare it month to month, year to year, because if it spikes, well, then maybe there's a leak somewhere and you need to go fix it. So the data is power. It gives you that information over your property to know where there are problem areas. So the more you can break down those utilities, the better.
It's funny you should say that too. So one of the other things that a lot of people don't think about is keeping track of that is if you have long-term tenants, obviously you can't keep the rent the same price forever. You've got to increment the rent because your costs are going to incrementally go up over time as a general rule. But a lot of times that data can give you, a non-emotional approach to, hey, I've got to raise the rent because my water bill is, I think we'll all agree, water and electricity always go up. They never go down. So, over time, those are going to slowly increase. I mean, you can always go back to your tenants and say, hey, listen, the water bill, has slowly crept up. I'm paying another $200 a year for it now. And, I've got to be able to pass on those costs onto you in order to make it work for everybody. So a lot of times that data is very helpful when it comes time to, reestablish a rent price.
So all these things, all these items that you should keep track of, tell me how you design Rental Hero then to do so.
Well, that's the beauty of it. When you start off with, say, an Excel spreadsheet or something, and you're going to start tracking it, you just kind of start tracking stuff, and you start, this month or next month, you start rearranging the categories because it takes time for you to figure out how
maybe you don't like the way you set it up initially, so you go back and you try to fix it.
And then you got to try and grab, and then what do you do with all those individual transactions? Do you take them, you move them over? Trying to do that stuff in Excel is brutal. So one of the things that Rental Hero does is when you first log into it, there's basically 4 pages in it. And there's a place for you to enter all your rental units. There's a place for you to enter your expenses, which comes pre-set up with all of the basic categories that most people will use. And then you customize them from there. So, hey, if you want to add in some subcategories, or you want to add in a new category to track, raking leaves or something, or whatever that.
Or if you have a special capital improvement project.
Yeah, anything, right. You can create your own categories to do that. And then, there's an income page where you track your income. And then the last one is your profit and loss page. And that's what you're going to essentially hand to your accountant at the end of each quarter, or at the end of each year, or however often you need to file tax returns for it. But it's already pre-set up. And the idea of, hey, if you decide today that you want to suddenly break out a bunch of expenses that you have already categorized, it's simple. You click on the category, it shows you a list of everything you entered, you select the ones you want to move, and you move them to a new category. Doing those kinds of things inside of Excel or other software programs that are designed to be much more intricate take a ton of time, and it's a bunch of work. Whereas, with Rental Hero, it's straightforward. It's kind of hard to explain it, because when you get into it, it's so easy. You just kind of get it.
Well, I was going to ask, is it idiot proof for someone like me?
So, for a long time, we've thought about, literally putting this on our front pages. It's stupid easy rental accounting, because it literally is stupid easy to use it. It's really simple. You go in and, like I say, you just kind of understand it. And the nice part too is, because it's built for rental units, is that if you own multi-unit properties, or if you have, and a lot of people will have this, if you have multiple properties, you might have each one set up under its own LLC, which is great legal protection to do that. You can actually generate a profit and loss report for each one of those properties separately.
So just explain quickly what a profit and loss statement is.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what a profit and loss statement is, it's really simple. It just tells you what your income is, what your expenses are, and the profit that you made over any given period of time. So typically, most people will look at it quarterly, or they'll look at it annually. So if you have to pay estimated taxes every quarter, which means you're taking in a significant amount of profit every quarter, which means you're making so much, the government says, hey, or the IRS says, hey, you're making so much money, you need to start paying us taxes on a quarterly basis, because we're afraid at the end of the year, if you don't pay us enough, you're going to have a huge tax bill. That's kind of the concept of it. So the profit and loss statement, and certainly inside of Rental Hero, that's what it generates, is the profit and loss statement. It's, you hand that to an accountant, or, hopefully you're using an accountant, or if not, you're going to go find an accountant soon. But that's the report that's going to give you everything that you need in order to file those quarterly or annual taxes, which essentially, like I said, it's just income, expenses, and profit.
Income, expenses, profit, and then somewhere in there would be like your mortgage payment, your debt service.
Yeah. So typically debt service and whatnot would be, well, not even so much the debt service. The balance sheet is where you would show, hey, here's how much you have a property. Here's, balance sheet shows assets and liabilities. So obviously your asset would be your home, and then the liability would be your mortgage that you still owe on it. So for most people who have rental properties, a balance sheet is either something their accountant's going to keep for them, or, if it's not something that your accountant's going to keep for you, like for an LLC, for example, you don't even need to have a balance sheet to file it on your taxes. There's only certain things like corporations and S corps that require balance sheets. But even then, like I said, for a rental property, it's pretty straightforward, which is actually one of the reasons why we don't have it inside of Rental Hero, because all it is literally your, the asset you have is your home, or the house, the rental, whatever it might be. And then the liability is whatever you owe on the mortgage.
So this is a relatively new software.
Yes.
Rental Hero.
Yep.
Can you just kind of talk about the process of putting this together, how you designed it, and the feedback you're getting on it?
Yeah, sure. So to give you the history of Rental Hero, the concept was born about a year and a half, 2 years ago. We had said, yeah, listen, this is something we're going to make. And we are midstream another software package which we have, which is called RealtyZam, which is the exact same thing, but it's built for real estate agents. So, real estate agents.
What's the name of it?
Yep, it's called RealtyZam, ZAM. If you go to Google and type in Rental Hero or RealtyZam, they'll both come up right away. But, for real estate agents, it's a little bit more complex, because they're more interested in tracking their income and profit and expenses and average commissions. So because they're doing multiple deals, a year, or some even multiple deals a month. And the idea was born from that when we had kind of hit about that, what we call the 80% level of completion on that project. And we had so many realtors, as you know, you may very well have a bunch of listeners who are real estate agents who also do investing on the side. It's very common to have both. So we started getting more and more requests for it. I was actually using RealtyZam to do my accounting for my rental because it does the same concept. It tracks your income, your expenses, and generates a profit and loss statement. So, we had decided to pull the trigger on it. So we spent, probably about a year developing it. And then, and thankfully, because we had already had about 80% of it written, because we just ported everything that we had done over to RealtyZam and then just moved it over to, make it catered towards people who own rentals. So we released it back in late December, early January of 2018. And, like our initial product like RealtyZam, we released it as kind of a bare level, waited till we got a couple hundred users, got a bunch of feedback, and then we start building around the feedback. So, even what it is today, it's still not 100% complete. I mean, it certainly is people use it, they love it.
What are some of the things you're still adding to it? So
the big things that we're going to be adding here in the future is for people who own a lot of rentals. One of the challenges is how do you track who's paid you every month and have they not paid you for this month? So that's one of the big things that we're going to be working on, or that we're already actually in the process of working on, but should be done here probably in the next 2 months. And then after that, the big thing that we're going after is setting up an automatic payment system, so you can start invoicing or send rent bills, if you will, to your tenants, and then they can pay you with their credit card or with their bank account.
And what are some of the nifty things you can do with it? Like, can you keep track of your receipts?
Yeah, so that's something I didn't think about earlier. I just assume a lot of this stuff is kind of second nature to anyone who's ever had a business or owned rentals. Is you'd say, what are some of those best practices? Best practice is keep receipts, because especially for rental costs, because typically when you have to pay something on a rental, it's typically a significant expense, right? So you want to make sure you're keeping receipts for those, because if you ever do get audited and you don't have receipts for it, you may find yourself with once again a nice tax bill. So one of the great things about another perfect reason you should be using a software, whether it's Rental Hero or anything else, is we all have mobile apps now. So Rental Hero, same thing. It's a free mobile app, that you can take pictures of your receipts and then enter in your expense, and it stores everything together, all set up in the cloud. And then when you print off that profit and loss report, in Rental Hero anyway, you have 2 check boxes when you go to print it. You can say include a detailed list of all the transactions and include a copy of receipts. So now when you hand this report to your accountant or email it to him, print it off, email it, whatever, it's a PDF file, you're going to have a copy of all of your receipts there. Same goes if you ever got audited, you could just print that off and say, boom, I got a list of all my receipts. I got a list of every single transaction, dated, the whole 9 yards. So once again, it's giving you that.
So I don't have to keep track of all my receipts and keep them in a box.
Nope, you don't have to keep them in a box. You can just take pictures.
Put them on the cloud.
Yep, absolutely.
So I know we can both agree that having some sort of rental property software to keep track of your accounting is important, whether it be QuickBooks, Excel. Don't do it by pen and paper.
Yeah,
don't get out graph paper. That's a disaster. But or there's many products out there. But I want to give you an opportunity here to really pitch Rental Hero. Why is Rental Hero a product that our listeners should consider?
So, like I had said, if you notice, there's a common theme throughout this, I think throughout the whole talk that we've been doing, and this is something that applies to, any other business that you have outside of rentals, is try to make things as simple as possible. And that's what we've done with Rental Hero. It is literally stupid easy. The idea being that you log into it and you know how to use it. I mean, our tutorial is like 3 pages, and I'm not talking like pages of handwritten. It's probably 3 paragraphs long. I mean, it's that simple to use. And it's because it's only built for rental property owners. It's not built to do 1,000 other things under the sun like many of the other big box accounting software programs are.
If you're interested in this, check out the price and all that. It sounds like it's like a monthly fee.
Yeah, so it's really simple. It's a monthly fee. I might as well just tell you what the price is. It's simple. We're not ashamed of it. The pricing is excellent. So it's $10 a month. Mm-hmm. $10 a month is the pricing for it, and it's unlimited properties, unlimited reports. reports, unlimited receipts, unlimited everything. So
it's not $10 per property.
It's not $10 per property. Yeah, you can have 100 properties and it's still $10 a month.
Really?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's built for everybody from, hey, I have one property that I manage to, people who have multi-unit buildings. It's set up to do.
Yeah, so you're $120 a year to have accounting software. That's a no-brainer right there.
Well, not only is it a no-brainer, but this is something interesting. It's a great segue into something that I've found odd for years. Is when you own a business, everybody looks at it as an expense a little bit, but I think is the wrong way. So if you came to me and you said, "Hey, I'm going to go buy X for this X product for my property, and it's $100," you say, "Well, is it really worth $100?" I would say, "No, it's not $100. Is it worth $80?" And the reason being is whenever you buy anything for one of your businesses, whether it's your rental property or whatnot, you get a tax savings from that, because that's $100 of profit that you're now putting into an expense. So you're not going to pay taxes on it.
Right. So it's tax deductible.
So it's tax deductible. Yeah. And if you look in Michigan, your average savings, assuming you fall into where the majority of people are going to be about 20% on anything that you spend on a rental property.
Yeah. But there's also the time cost of money. Like if you're spending your time entering all this information by hand into Excel or trying to figure out QuickBooks, that's costing you way more than $10 a month.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So whether it's your software or some other software, just make it easier on yourself. Why do people have to make it so hard?
Yep, and like I tell everybody, I say people will get a lot of website requests that'll come in and they'll say, hey, listen, what's different about you in QuickBooks or you in FreshBooks or you in any other books, any of the other accounting software that's out there? And I say, it's kind of hard to describe it, but if you just that's why I encourage everybody. I think QuickBooks has a free trial. I'm sure FreshBooks or any of the other ones that are out there, and we do too. It's a 30-day free trial. You don't enter in a credit card or anything. You try it out for 30 days. If you like it at the end of 30 days, hey, great. You can pay for it then. If not, no harm, no foul. You go on your merry way, and it's no big deal. We don't charge you. We don't do anything weird, like that. So what I always recommend is, try out two of them. If you're just getting started out and you want to see which one you like better, try out Rental Hero and try out QuickBooks or try out FreshBooks or Sage or the other, 4 or 5 accounting softwares that are out there. Now, I will add that since the majority of your listeners are, RPOA members, RPOA gets a special discount on Rental Hero. So your first year is actually only $79, and then you get 20% off every year thereafter.
So, so let's talk about that, because you do have an agreement with the RPOA, Rental Property Owners Association, here in Michigan. How do people find you on the internet, and how would they take advantage of that discount?
Yep, sure. So the way to find us is you can go to our website, which is rentalhero.io. It's a .io, not .com. The .com was taken, so we went with .io, but it's rentalhero.io. Which is
I as in
Indian? Like IO, like input output.
Input output.
Yeah, and think of it as input output. Yep. So rentalhero.io. If you just go to Google and you type in Rental Hero, we'll be the first one that comes up. So it should be pretty easy to find us. Now, the way that you get the discount through the RPOA membership is you've got to log into your RPOA account or on their webpage, and they have, I believe it's the member special. I forget the name of it.
So they have a link directly there.
Right there. And you click on that link, and that link will give you the, the discount. If not, even if you just come to our site and you sign up, send us an email afterwards, or when you're ready to pay, and you say, hey, I am an RPOA member, and then we can validate that with the RPOA and then apply your discount. So either way, whatever works best for you.
Great. Well, it sounds like a great product. Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about it and just share your thoughts on best practices for keeping the accounting in the books for your rental property.
Yep, sure. So I think if anything, in closing, I would say that, the 3 or 4 things, once again, are 1, use a software program. I know you love Excel. I do too, but it's not the right tool for the job. Use something that's going to make your life easy and keep you organized. 2, make sure you keep receipts for everything. Again, software works really good because you can take pictures of the receipts, tie them, and now they're saved in the cloud too. So, if you drop your laptop tomorrow and the hard drive breaks, which, by the way, that has happened to me before, and I have lost, 7 or 8 months of data because I didn't have an automatic backup. One of the things when you're using a cloud-based software, for example, Rental Hero, and I'm sure all the other ones do this too, is, we do a nightly backup to 2 separate locations. So had our server died tomorrow, the worst anybody would possibly lose is 24 hours worth of data. Anything else after that's, on backup, and we keep multiple days of backups in process. So a cloud one is a great way to do it. Third is, don't overthink your categorizing. Think about categorizing your expenses the way that makes sense to you. That helps you manage your rental property and understand your finances better. And then the last but not least, and the very most important, don't wait to the last minute to do everything. Give yourself a little bit of time in between, doing your expenses and your accounting stuff.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Steve, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Brian. It was a real pleasure.
This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.